Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon. It's the afternoon. Really excited about being here today. So the path for women has been uphill from the beginning of history. The definition of gender roles begin with the simple fact that women can have children and men cannot. Certainly our physical strengths are different, but nothing else should make a difference, yet it has for hundreds of years. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." In 1848, those citizens were 4 women having tea to discuss that after 70 years after the American Revolution, it was high time for women to play a more active role in all parts of society. And they drafted a Declaration of Sentiments that set an agenda for the equal treatment of women and men under the law and voting rights for women. And so the women's rights movement began. That was almost 170 years ago. It took another 42 years for the 19th Amendment to be passed in 1920, which granted voting rights to women. And a lot has happened since then. After women secured the right to vote, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League in 1921, and that evolved into Planned Parenthood in 1942. A group of black women also created a coalition against job discrimination, sexism, and racism in 1935. And through the next few decades, the fight for birth control continued until 1960, when the FDA approved the birth control bill. Now, we are making progress. In 1963, John F. Kennedy established a commission on the status of women and selected Eleanor Roosevelt to chair it. The commission found substantial discrimination against women in the workplace and recommended fair hiring practices, paid maternity leave, and affordable childcare. Progress, progress. And that same year, Betty Friedan came out with The Feminine Mystique. It resonated with women across the country who were feeling dissatisfied with their lives. I remember my mom reading that book, and she started her own business not long afterward. Women were galvanized by that book, and in 1966, the National Organization for Women was formed. It was the next evolution of the women's liberation movement, fighting for equal rights, social justice, and equal opportunities in education and employment. Soon, laws were passed regarding common property, no-fault divorce. Ms. Magazine was born in 1971, and a new voice of feminism entered the scene. Title IX was passed, and Roe v. Wade decision was handed down. Times were changing for women. Title IX has been transformative. It allowed women equal access to education, and that began to change gender stereotypes in the classroom. That law also gave women a right to fight sexual harassment, get scholarships to schools, and all of this gave women a new sense of self-confidence. It was a landmark shift. But I can't help wonder if all this supposed empowerment let the women of the next generation off the hook. Did we stop waving the flag and moving forward for true equality? I did not realize that I was going to be discriminated as a woman until I hit a snag a few years into my first job. I was charging along as quickly as I possibly could, and then someone held out their palm and said, "Stop. Women do not move as quickly as men." I was like, really? Well, nobody was going to stop me, so I quickly left that job and began to forge my own new path. That path included staying home at points while having 3 kids along the way. And through many careers, I found myself in the middle of the tech revolution. I had begun writing a blog, and I was starting to watch the next revolution of the web come into play. It was something we know today is called Tech 2.0. And I was fascinated with a company called Curb Media. I was reading it every day. Curb Media was on real estate, Eater was on food, and Racked was around shopping. And I said to my husband, you know, it's really too bad that you wouldn't invest in a company like this, because this is the future of how we are going to take in content. These short sound bites of information that will create community, and we will, you know, be able to read what's happening in all these different verticals. And he came home the next day and he said, well, they're raising some money. You should invest in them. This could be your next career. And so I called the founder of Curb, Lockhart Steele, and it was my first investment. And this was 1997. And so like everything else I've ever done in my life, I have a lemonade stand on Monday, but I need a chain by Friday. And I started to make this commitment towards investing. And because of my blog, I was hearing from all these women about their businesses and what they were doing. And I realized that nobody was understanding their businesses on the other side of the table, that these women weren't getting funded simply because the person on the other side of the table couldn't connect with them, didn't understand the opportunity that they were building. And so I made this commitment that I was not only going to be a champion of these women, I was going to invest in them. So today, with over 90 investments, 75% of those investments are investments in women founders. And it didn't take much. You know, it didn't take much for me to think about this, because again, I look back in history. You know, women invented the windshield wiper, the first computer programmer, the diaper, Kevlar, fire escapes, and even chocolate chip cookies. And if you do any research on many of those women, they had a really difficult time getting funded. And then, with a friend of mine who was a professor at the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU, she too was getting frustrated in her classroom because there wasn't a gender balance in her classroom that particular year. And she said to me, there are not enough women in tech. I was like, you know, there are plenty of women in tech. The difference between women and men, their counterparts in the same industry, is that women network differently. They don't show up for events that they don't deem as really important, that are going to make an impact in their life. And so she said, well, I want to do something where we can celebrate women. And so we started this event called the Women's Entrepreneur Festival that we now named We Festival. So that was 7 years ago when we started that conversation. And fast forward, the event is no longer at NYU, and in 2017, we'll have this event in New York, Los Angeles, as well as Berlin. And so that has been an evolution too. And remember, 6 years ago, and even though we started this conversation 7 years ago, there wasn't much conversation about women entrepreneurs. Since then, women-owned businesses have grown by almost 30%. Women want more control of their careers while attempting to have a balanced life and a flexible work schedule. Being an entrepreneur is not for the fearful. It is for strong, powerful women and men who have taken that leap into the unknown to own their own destiny. We know, and I certainly do, hands on, front on, is that it's more difficult for women to raise money for their businesses. As I said, I can tell you firsthand that women take longer to build the foundations of their companies before stepping on the gas. And when I look around at the landscape of gender equality, it is refreshing to see so many of the large companies that started in the last 20 years making policy changes that push for equality, such as maternity and paternity leave. We live in a time where families must have 2 incomes to survive, and we are seeing companies make changes because of that. Making men take time off to have their children from the very onset changes the game. It forces gender equality at home, and that bleeds into everything else. The ROI in companies that have women at the helm is higher. Having companies with women on the C team makes for a healthier and more successful business. All of these things start to add up, and that is why I believe we are actually at the edge of a major change. It is a new era of women's lib. You can feel it in the air. Women and equality are a conversation in every single business today. Women superstars who are building companies are being written about daily. More data is being analyzed around gender-balanced companies. And we also have a pretty good shot that the next president of the United States will be a woman. So how do we continue to move forward? I believe women need to unite as a community while we build our companies. Listen, I considered it calling a day after 5 years of We Festival, but it was truly a night of multiple margaritas with my husband and my sister that changed the trajectory of that business. And my husband said to me, "You can't give this up." The impact of this event has made on women's entrepreneurs is significant. Take it to the next level. The importance of having a place where women can come to gather, hear, and see other women who have forged their own path is powerful. Being in a room with 400 women who can talk about their business and also talk about how hard a climb it is and when do they have time to even shop is important. And so, like many of you, I am beginning an entrepreneurial path along the side of you. As I said, this event will be in New York, Berlin, and LA in 2017. And so my entrepreneurial path is not only as an investor, it is also as a business owner. I think about those 4 women sitting around the table wanting equal rights for themselves and other women. The reality is the change comes from the outside. We have to continue pushing this movement forward. So, women, as you grow your business with the hope of going public or having a big exit or starting several companies or just building something that really makes a difference, it is important for all of you to stay in the public eye while doing that. We are the role models for the next generation of women to continue the movement of equal rights for all. We need to do that for the young women who are now age 8 or 12, and they can point to any of us and say, "I want to be that person. I can do it because she did it." And there are not enough of us yet at that level. And I do believe, after seeing so many women's businesses get funded and grow over the past decade, that we're getting there. This is an ongoing women's movement that started back in 1848. Let's continue to build this community and our businesses so that all glass ceilings are broken. It is up to all of you, women entrepreneurs, who are taking control of your own lives by building companies that will establish equal opportunities for all women. Our businesses are our voices. Let's use them. Thank you.
Such a pleasure to be sitting on the stage back here in Nashville for 3686 and with an investor who has been a role model and mentor for me of how I work with entrepreneurs and how I approach investing. And 2 founders who I've known for a few years. Jewel and I met on this stage last year where she won at 3686. And Corie, I want to think it was like summer of 2012 when you were getting started. I just want to throw a little more gasoline on the theme of Joanne's opening and why investing in the businesses of women is so important. Women are starting companies, and I'm going to go broader than startups. Women are starting companies at a faster rate than men. However, 90% of them do not have employees. So when I talk about investment, I want you to think about where are you sending your business? Whose services are you choosing? Because here's where it matters for the economy of this country. And this is coming from a recent Capital One funded study called Breaking Through. If only 1/4 of the existing 8.9 million women-owned businesses in the United States with no employees added a single employee in the next 3 years, it would result in 2.2 million jobs. You tell me who else is doing job creation. We all have the power in our pockets right now to affect the underlying economy of this country by investing in women. So that's my challenge to all y'all out there. All right, Joanne, let's talk about these two founders. We got Jewel with parts. We got Corie with bridesmaids dresses. What the hell are you investing in?
People. People. It's all about people. I mean, so out of those 90 investments, I think 50 of them I probably gave their first dollar to. And actually, it's hilarious how I find out about that later on in life. It was like, oh yeah, you know, Joanne gave me that first dollar. I'm like, really? And you're investing in people. I mean, because companies evolve as they, even first year, second year, third year, it is not necessarily what the original concept was. And so if you're not, it's like a house. You can never move the house, right? But you can decorate the house. You know, once you're married with the founder, you're with the founder. You can change the business, but you're with that founder.
And we've talked about this in the back, and I know it's one of those annoying things that startup founders hear when they hear investors say they invest in people, but I want to look at Corie and Jewel. You know, there's lots of investors out there who say they invest in people or they invest in teams. It's just like deal or no deal, right? Can we call bullshit on it, or is Joanne the only one out there investing in people?
Joanne, definitely, I believe her. She has some great founders in her portfolio, and I think she is true to that, investing in people. The majority of investors that I have had the pleasure of meeting with, I think that's not necessarily true. It's something that maybe they want it to be true, it's aspirational, it's something that you will find on their websites. But I would say in 100% of the rejection or information about why they did not invest, it's never because of the team. So it doesn't make sense if you say you invest in people and then the reason that you didn't invest is not because of any objection with the team. Something isn't adding up there. So I think that, again, maybe it's aspirational. It's something that a lot of firms want to be able to do, but not always true in execution.
So they have a problem with someone who's done enterprise sale for Google who is in parts. I think you should tell everybody. Yeah, I want you to give your one-liner what you do, because I can say what I think it is that you do.
Well, you're pretty good at pitching it.
Okay, so how many people have had like something broken on a refrigerator, a car, and you're trying to call GE and you're like, I need that thing, right? You know that thing that goes in the whatever? and then my air conditioner is going to work again? She solves that problem?
Yes, so we are a computer vision company. We've created technology to allow you to take a picture of just
that
about
thing.
anything, that thingamajigger, and we can tell you what it is within 7 seconds.
No more of those awkward conversations with customer service. Okay.
Yeah.
Corie, what's been your experience in terms of the investing in team and people when you were out?
Well, I feel like part of the challenge is, and one of the other things we talked about backstage was that being an investor is hard. Like, you are with that company for, in some cases, up to like 15 years. And I think one experience I had pitching my business was really, really insightful for me in terms of, I got all the way through the pitch. It was with an investor who was kind of the, not the Shark Tank type, but like he was lobbing questions at me and I was answering them. And he got to the end and was like, when I'm investing in a company, I really have to be passionate about the project. And I have to be passionate about the product because I'm going to spend so much time with you. I'm going to spend so much time with this business. And I can't see myself ever being passionate about bridesmaids dresses. And again, I had the retort that you cannot hate bridesmaids dresses as much as I do. That is why we're in business. You've never had to wear one. I've had to buy one. But I think that's part of the problem. And for me, it was really insightful. And now I've changed the way I pitch my business to: we are not a fashion company. We are a logistics and operations company. That is my background, and that I try and connect that way. So I think part of it is just that, if there aren't as many female investors, and if you're pitching a business that is, targeting a market that they don't necessarily understand, it's harder. Yeah.
How have, and Joanne, I want you to think about this in terms of some of your other founders as well, how have those challenges in seeking money made you think differently about your business? Not beyond the pitch, but in terms of how you're creating value. And you both talked about this in the back. You talked about building businesses. You weren't saying, this is how I'm going to get an exit. So how have those challenges on that sort of route to get funding, how's that made you think about your business?
Well, I would say, our biggest pushback is market size. It is, weddings are one day.
Expensive
it's
day.
a big, expensive day, but people worry that, how big is this market? And, there's 9 million bridesmaids every year, so I would argue that it's a pretty big market. But it really forced me to go back to think about what are the market dynamics. And I think if you look at what makes a company successful, not just for the short term, but for the long term, it is that you are doing something that not everybody else is doing. So if there are 1,000 companies competing with you, no one's going to make any margin. And part of kind of what I ended up realizing was that it's really important to build a moat around your business. So we didn't change our end game of the customer that we're serving, the problem that we're solving, but it did force me to think differently in terms of, well, how do we create value by making it so that it is difficult to compete with us? What do we invest in that makes it so we have a major competitive advantage on all fronts? And I think that, I think in the long term, that's going to help our business.
Yeah, for me, I think early on, I kind of understood that my job was to de-risk my business as much as I could for people I would be presenting it to. So, my first big thing was, can this technology even work? And that was a big question early on, is like, can you build something that really hasn't existed before for these types of products? And that was a huge hurdle to jump over, but I was focused on getting a team together that could actually help me in building out this sort of magical technology. And so that was the first check. And then I thought, okay, we built the technology, it works, we can show it to people, we're definitely gonna be able to get some money. No, it didn't work. So then it was, okay, well, I need to get customers who can prove out that this is very valuable to them and they want to take on using this technology. And then I got customers. And then taking them back and say, okay, great, we got customers, we got technology, we got a team, where's the money? And then
we got a big market.
Huge market. So, it's still been difficult, even though I've constantly taken the feedback from meetings and conversations and really just focused on just creating a business that's foolproof. And it's gonna work because we've focused so hard on these key factors. But again, I think that just makes it so we're getting more and more valuable, adding more and more to sort of what we're offering. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. In one way, it's really good because we're building a sustainable business. And the other side is it's kind of difficult because we're not able to push as hard or grow as quickly as I want to because we're restrained by the fact that we haven't been able to raise as much capital.
Yeah. You're nodding down there, Joanne.
What was that? Yeah, I mean, I see it with so many women, and it's frustrating. I mean, there's this one group that I'm invested in, and there's a woman in the C team. two guys started, and I like what they were doing. So I do invest in men as well. They just have to be like so much better. And, and so, you know, it was your classic, which I see every day, which is they raise the first round, they close on the seed, 12 months later, boom, big VC, bang, next 12 months, bang, huge check. And I'm thinking, why? Like, why isn't this happening for everyone else? This is so frustrating. And, you know, it is, I think one thing about women is that it does take them longer to sort of build those businesses. In many ways, they're scarred from the fundraising activities. But in the end, because of those scars, they build much better, long-lasting businesses.
Let's talk about the scars for a second, and then I want to come back to raising too much money and what it means for the business. You're fundraising currently.
Yes.
I'm looking at you, Jewel.
Yes.
So what's the effect of the scar of fundraising?
If you guys probably can see bags under my eyes, I'm not sleeping enough. I'm sleeping on planes quite often because one other thing is, I don't know, we really talked about being located in the Southeast, and I think this conference is great because it's bringing people here and showing that there are great companies in the Southeast.
Agreed.
But it is really hard to raise money
And build a business
at the same time. That is the key. Because you can't just stop. I mean, I'm signing customers and also trying to raise money at the same time. So as far as scars, I think I'm always sort of blown away by the types of things that people will say to me in a meeting. We won't even go there, but.
We'll have a special session on that later. There'll be alcohol involved.
I could write a whole book.
Yeah, I'm actually keeping notes, so. But I mean, it's a thing where I go through mental exercise like every day to kind of build myself up and get ready for some of these meetings, as I just know that it's going to be challenging. And the good thing is the shift for me since I first started was before I was trying to convince people about my business and, you know, tell them all the great things about it. And now I've shifted and I'm more about, this is a great opportunity for you. So if people don't understand that in a meeting, it's like, oh, it's no problem. It's more so your loss. And so that's been a shift for me. I'm not really asking because I need it. I'm more so giving people an opportunity to be a part of something great.
And that's what happens to women, right? This first they come in, they're very, you know, they want these people on the other side of the table to believe in them. And if they don't, they should leave. Like, you don't want those people as your investors anyhow. And then as their businesses grow, they feel more confident. And then just like, you know, Jules said, it's like, you should be so lucky to invest in me. And there is a point where, you know, I see it shift all the time. And it's really great to see that shift taking place, whereas I see more men come in before they even build a business, which is, you should be so lucky to invest in me. You know, it's just a different mentality.
We just get our bravado at the different point.
Yeah,
okay.
Different thing.
You mentioned before in terms of, and using the example, taking multiple rounds of VC funding. Can startups take the wrong money?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, money is money, right? And particularly at the beginning, you know, I've heard from one woman I invested in, she's like, I really don't like them. I was like, but they're going to give you a check for $250,000. So let's figure out how to compartmentalize them. And we'll take their money, you know, so you can move forward on your business. Yeah, you can take wrong money. I'm in a company right now who that investor should not be in that business. They really are not early stage investors, and they're torturing the founders at board meetings because they really don't understand the trajectory of what you should be hiring at the beginnings of your company and what your work org chart should look like. You know, they're telling them to hire people that make no sense, that where would you plug them in when you don't have anything underneath it? So yeah, you can. And you can raise too much money early on as well. And I think you have to have a product before you raise money. I've seen companies raise ridiculous amounts of capital without a product, and then by the time you like putz around with that money, you know, you burn through all this cash trying to figure out your product. I think you're much better off being scrappy.
Get something there together and
I mean, there is a cadence to how this money is raised. I mean, you see it consistently. You know, you raise, it's good for 12 months, and you raise again, it's good for 18 months, you raise again, hopefully it's 24 months, and I think we'll see more and more, particularly women who are scarred by this, on the 24 months. They're going to figure out how to be profitable. with these businesses that have moats around them, that they hopefully would either say, yes, I will take that huge check to put the foot on the gas, or I don't need to take that check.
I'm growing on revenue.
Right.
Not a bad idea. Let's talk about where you found your investors. You found Joanne, but you've both had to create a lot of spreadsheets and travel to a lot of states and find, not the typical, so to speak. I think we all have as I like to say, sort of a TechCrunch view of who investors are, and it's a VC and they're in Silicon Valley, and that's not the only investors who are out there. So can you both talk about that process of how you found investors, like what you did, and then, generally speaking, where you found some, beyond Joanne, some of the good money out there?
I cold emailed Joanne and said, this is what I'm building. Can we meet for coffee? And so she was our first money in. And then I think it's really, I almost approach it as figuring out who out there has invested in something that isn't competitive, but is similar in some way to what we're doing. And then trying to find connections to them. And so that was part of it. And then a lot of it is just once you get those people invested in you, then using their connections. And I think which is an important point in terms of some of the early investors is, we have an interest in you being successful. So our role in opening up our Rolodex, right? And sometimes it's educating these early investors who might be new to the game that they've got to do this. Yeah. Well, and I feel like then you end up finding, I think I'm very fortunate that I think everyone who is invested in us, I really genuinely like as a person. And I think they are very good, very good fits for the business. They understand what we're doing. They believe in what we're doing. And I think a lot of that is, some of it is just when you meet somebody you know. So I've had conversations where it's taken 15 minutes to get somebody to invest in the business because they get it. And so I think part of it is just finding those people.
Yeah, I think for me, networks are super important. I realized that pretty early on. And so, Joanne, I don't know if you know that I did this, but I kind of tried to surround you with people who I know had an ear.
So I love panels where all the secrets come out. I'm stalking you, Joanne. Okay.
Yeah, but you do research and find out who are people that would invest, who who invest in women or invest in machine learning or whatever the commonalities are, and then one thing I learned is investors care about the folks who are surrounding them and what they're investing in. And so the intros from someone who's trusted, that's been super helpful. So when Joanne came in, and she made intros, and then that helped to move things along as well. And then I've just not been afraid to get on a plane. I was sharing my largest investors in Billings, Montana.
Billings, Montana, that hotbed of VC activity.
Right, exactly. So that was really sort of random. I had emailed this company to see if they would be interested in being a customer, and they took a look at my website and they were like, well, actually, we want to be a customer and an investor. So, just...
Like I'm on the plane.
Yeah, I'll be there this
Where's Billings, Montana? Who flies there? Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so it's just getting creative because I realized, it's not going to be the traditional road. It's going to be getting scrappy and figuring out where are people. So.
All the information is out there,
right.
Which is much different than it was a decade ago. So, I remember even 5 or 6 years ago, I'd say to someone, how'd you find me, right? But now it's just like, how could you not?
Well, it's when someone says to me, I want to meet Joanne, I'm like, have you read her website? It's on the website.
Right, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, anyone who says to me they want an introduction to Joanne, I'm like, your horse's ass. She says on her website how to get in touch and reach out, and here's the email address.
Yeah. And I answer the emails.
Yeah.
Fastest person on email.
Well, and I think it's also, too, it's one of those things, if there's an investor that you're interested in, they're blogging, they're on Snapchat, they're doing podcasts, you know, there may be guests on someone's, they're doing all of this. If they're not doing it, well, that's in and of itself something now intriguing in terms of understanding why they're not out there visibly and what that means about them and how they approach investment and all the rest of that. But the information is there to discover the temperament and the interests of people.
Yeah, and we're also going through a shift in regards to the economy. I mean, it's like startup nation. It doesn't make any difference if it's bridesmaids dresses, parts, gluten-free products, back-end technologies, shipping. I mean, you name it. Technology is touching every single industry in this country and actually around the globe. And so you're seeing not only your, classic institutional VCs, you're seeing, angels like myself, but you're also seeing family offices that are really looking at the startup categories versus in the past maybe that they really weren't focused on that. They were more focused on the public markets, right? So everyone is taking a piece of their pie if they have capital and are looking at ways to put money into these businesses, and with the hope that majority of them actually understand those businesses and have some, Corie just got a new investor. They've been in the wholesale business and retail business and manufacturing for 40 years. Like the value they provide is tremendous. And so I think you have to be creative, but there is a lot of capital out there.
Well, and a lot more that needs to come to the table.
Yes.
Let's just quickly talk on market size, because that's one of those other things besides team and people. Investors want a big market, but sometimes a market is too big. Can you, Corie, talk about your experiences in terms of explaining to investors didn't think the market was quite big enough with what you were doing?
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is, actually, another woman had shown me her pitch deck, and she had this great slide in it, and I, of course, borrowed that concept and used it for my own. But it had two different, it compared their market size with another, large market that traditionally seems much bigger. And so I started digging into it, and the online dating market is about $2 billion. And that has 900 companies on Angel List that are all either VC funded or are trying to get funding.
900.
900. The bridesmaid dress market is $2 billion, and there's 3 of us. And so, I would say that I think using an analogy shows, it makes it more concrete for somebody who maybe, isn't familiar with the market. And then I think it's really just really getting an understanding of what makes a market good. What makes a market so that you are able to have a venture type return and that you will be able to sustain margins on your business.
And why I think too, you've started sort of smaller.
Yeah.
And getting, how have you been able, because I think there's probably a lot of founders out there who might have that same attack in the market. They're starting here knowing there's all this out there.
Well, and I think if you try to and really focus on, we're focused very strongly on serving one particular need. We offer bridesmaids dresses for rent, and that is a very, very clear-cut need. However, during the process of building this business, and I have, investors to thank for challenging me on market size, because then it forced me to say, okay, well, what makes a sustainable, how do you build a moat around a business? And as we've been building out the technology, as we've been building out the operations, as we've been building out the manufacturing, I've realized, there's a lot of just assets here that we will be able to take to larger markets. And so I think it is a trade-off, because investors want big markets that you're going after. But if you look at most of the very successful businesses that are still around, they all started in one particular clear use case. And so, for me, it was kind of getting comfortable saying, okay, maybe we're not trying to do everything right now, but we're very, very laser focused, yet we see a clear path towards, you know, this being a much, much bigger opportunity.
But I just want to note, I mean, even when Corie started, you know, listening to the market, the first dresses that she had made, it took to the third rental to make money. And then changed the fabric, changed a lot of things. These dresses make money the first time it is rented. They're rented 15 times. Think about that. And that's an incredible business.
Yeah. Who else gets to say that?
Very few.
So, Jewel, how do you explain your market size to people?
So, you know, I think I kind of have the opposite problem because the industrial distribution space is $122 billion in the US alone, $570 billion globally. Image recognition as an industry is growing to $28 billion next year. So very big markets, but for some people, I think, for some reason, I think investors, you know, whether it be their background and not having that perspective of parts being a kind of a sexy industry.
Big market that makes money is really sexy.
I'm with you.
I think so.
I totally agree.
But it's sometimes a difficult conversation. So I usually try to frame it around, okay, look around. Every single thing in this room is made of components. We recognize those things. And companies are paying us to do that. That's it. It's pretty simple, but I don't know, it's sometimes hard to connect on that. I think about helping people understand all the different sectors that parts touch, and then if that's not big enough, okay, right now we're doing parts, but visual search for everything. Just think about that as the larger vision. And as we get better at the industries that we're in and kind of grow into new industries, and at some point in time, we will be able to recognize everything. And hopefully that's big enough.
Yeah. We could have a mind-blowing conversation on how big that market is over drinks when we talk about the scars as well. Oh, Lord. Joanne, let me sort of final question all this, start with you. I'm glad we're having this conversation. And I'm glad we're having this conversation on investing in women and investing in women's business because this is an economic issue and an economic driver issue. But are we going to be talking about this 5 years from now?
No. No, I don't think we will. God, I hope not. But, you know, as I said, I really think we are at a seminal turning point in regards to it. I mean, when you have these conversations, you know that things are changing. It's when no one's having these conversations that's scary. And you're also talking about a different generation, you know, the older millennials versus the younger millennials. You're looking at Generation Z, who could care less where you come from. And they have, you know, different things that they care about. And technology is changing so rapidly with the way that we live our lives. And, you know, because you have to have two-income families, because women are talking more about the importance of them wanting to continue work, how they're going to work, being entrepreneurs. Women, by the way, become entrepreneurs usually older in life than they do right out of college. I just don't think that we're going to be having these same conversations in 5 years. And I think one of the main reasons is that in the pipeline, there are so many unbelievable women that have been funded that nobody knows of, but they will. And it will be maybe a couple years from now, we are going to start seeing, like, all the time, women's businesses go public, sell to large corporations, whatever these things may be that you read about them, that they're doing $200 million a year in revenue and they're just going to continue running this business that's profitable. When we see more and more women's names out there, it changes the landscape because then more women will get into the businesses and it will just become happenstance. So no, I don't think we're going to be having these conversations 5 years from now.
So we'll have to find something else for Charlie and 3686 team to invite us back to talk about. We'll work on it till there. Any other final thoughts, Jewel and Corie, you want to share?
I just think that as long as there are more people like Joanne, more people like Christina from the Jump Fund, I know you guys are here, as long as there are more women who are on the other side of the table and can help be sort of our champions as we are trying to raise money and trying to grow our companies, then we won't have to have this conversation in 5 years. So that's a challenge to anyone out there who has the capacity to be an angel investor, to join angel groups, to help women entrepreneurs, that's what we need also.
Yeah, we do.
Well, and I would also just kind of add on to that. I think it's not just helping us, like obviously, like we'll take that, but it's also a better financial opportunity. One of my majors was finance, and the cornerstone of finance and the cornerstone of like financial theory is that you have to find mispriced opportunities. And the reason why women kind of have a higher ROI is because it's a mispriced opportunity. And so while it's great, I'm happy for people to invest in me because they believe in me, happy for people to invest in me because they think we're just a mispriced opportunity. I don't mind, but I think a lot of investors, or some investors that you pitch to, you see that even though it's all male partners in the fund, they acknowledge that there is this bias or this inability for a man to evaluate a market targeted towards women and are trying to correct for it. So I think that's encouraging, and I hope this mispriced opportunity goes away.
Yes, agreed.
Smart men will get it. And as for the women, the women
Open your checkbooks.
Yeah, bring your checkbooks. The largest wealth transfer in human history is happening right now because of women over the age of 50. So there's women over the age of 50. I won't ask you to put up your hand. I will put up mine, women over the age of 50. If you are not writing checks at an early stage, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the women who are investing and find out, because 70% of wealth in this country is going to be in the hands of women over the age of 50 in the next decade. And if we're not investing in the future at that early stage, we got to have a really big-ass conversation in a few years about the state of innovation. On that, thank you three so very much.
In case you guys are interested, there's also a podcast called Startup, and in season 2, they followed a group of women founders, and it was actually a fascinating season to listen to. So I could recommend that to you if you're interested in that topic. A couple housekeeping things. We are live streaming everything that's happening right now, so I don't know, here's the address that if you wanted to send people who aren't here but might want to check it out, please feel free to let them know. Let's get those views up. Also want to encourage you again to download the app, because that is how you will get to vote on the upcoming pitches that we're going to listen to. You can go to the App Store. I just downloaded it. It's very easy to do. There's also a cool activity stream there that will keep you posted on what's happening during the conference and also help you keep in touch with other people. So just go to the App Store and search for 3686, and you will find it there. All right, guys, going to keep moving. Right now, I'd like to give a shout out